Have you ever seen a movie that seemed like it had a good plot, but you just weren't interested? I did, and it was called Uncharted. It had an emotional core, that being the main character's relationship with his father or fatherly figure. So what was missing? Characterization. You need good characters. That means characters who have motivations and personalities which are distinct from other characters. If you have two important characters who are essentially the same, you probably don't need both. One of the most overlooked concepts in storytelling is having motivated characters. Aquaman 2, Madam Web, Secret Invasion, Argyle, Cocaine Bear, Captain Marvel, Damsel, 365 Days, Twilight, Suicide Squad, Eternals. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what came over me. Perhaps the reason is because of certain famous good movies with passive main characters, like The Big Lebowski or Forrest Gump. However, I would argue that the main characters are not actually passive in these films, just more laid back. In The Big Lebowski, Lebowski is constantly trying to get out of the situation he's been put in. His passiveness is its own goal. In Forrest Gump, Forrest has the overarching goal of romance with Jenny. My point is that your characters should want something, and that something should be driving their actions, and preferably the plot, throughout the story. A character without wants and motivations is an entirely forgettable character. A great source of motivation for your characters is some perspective on the emotional core, as discussed in the last video. Going along with motivation is character flaws. The reason I put this before personality is because usually the flaws are more important and relevant to the plot. A character without flaws is an entirely uninteresting character. Build the flaws first, to force every character into having them, keeping in mind that not all flaws must be solved by character arcs. In fact, most character arcs are unrelated to flaws and instead about the character finding new motivations or desires. A good flaw is one which doesn't make a character entirely unredeemable, but rather more human and sympathetic. A flaw is something a character does to themselves, and the audience can pity them for that, can understand the feeling of being your own worst enemy. At the same time, a flaw can be a great strength for a character. In Star Trek, Spock's overly logical personality was both a strength and a weakness. But most importantly, if you write a character without any flaws, people will call it a Mary Sue. And if there's one thing you learn from this video, it's that you should always write in fear of what people on the internet might say. When you have the most important parts of the character out of the way, oftentimes the personality will just fall into place. For instance, a character who is desperate to avenge their fallen partner may naturally be given a brooding and serious personality. However, sometimes it's more fun to go the direction opposite of obvious. Maybe you have a fun-loving revenge seeker who hides their grief. The stranger the combination, the more memorable a character can be. Take Captain Jack Sparrow, whose unique combination of wanting to be a feared and famous pirate is set at odds with a goofy personality, creating one of the most beloved characters of all time, until the last movie. At this point, you'll likely have a compelling character, but there's a big problem remaining. Your audience may grow to like your character eventually, but you want them to get invested quick. There are two common tricks to endear your character to the audience and get them on your side. The first and more well-known is saving the cat. Essentially, this is when a character does something good and selfless to show the audience that they're a good and moral person. Usually it's not something as grandiose as saving an actual cat, but maybe something smaller, like helping a victim of bullying pick up their things or leaving food out for a bird. This works great until you have a character who isn't really that morally good. In this case, you need to kick the dog. The dog is your character, and you need to show them having a bad time to make the audience pity them and understand what they do. All of this may seem like a lot, but it's absolutely vital to having great characters that are memorable. The good news is that you don't need to do it for every character. A good rule of thumb is that if they have more than a few lines or appear in more than one scene, it's probably a good idea to flesh out their motivations and flaws. So, you have your emotional core, your plot, and your characters. Now, all that's left is to write. In the next video. Bye-bye!